and welcome to the Women in ERP podcast. I'm Abigail Ullman.
And I'm Steph Poor.
And this is episode 7. And we're joined today by Amanda McKay, Director of Quality for AWE. Hi, Amanda.
Hello, thank you.
Steph, have you had a nice holiday?
I have. I had a glorious week in Spain with the family. It was just nice because it was actually only 4 days off work because of the bank holiday, which meant I actually got a proper holiday because, I don't know, I was able to properly switch off from computers and emails because people weren't actually working at home either.
Well done.
But yeah, it was amazing. And we were so lucky with the weather because it can be a bit hit and miss in April. But yeah, no, fantastic. What about yourself? Did you have a good Easter?
Yeah, I mean, I worked. I worked most of it, but we got 1 day away in Portmeirion in Wales, and it's amazing. Have you ever been? It's such a weird place. It's where The Prisoner was filmed, like the 1960s series. Have you been, Amanda?
I have, yes, many years ago. Yeah.
It's bizarre. Yeah, it's like being in Italy in the middle of Wales.
It's lost in time, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. You must go. But yeah, so
fabulous.
that's really all we did, and got out into the garden and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, chilled one, relaxed one generally. Let's have a chat with Amanda then. Amanda, who are you and what do you do?
So, Amanda McKay. I was going to say late middle age, but I may as well give it away. I'm 59 this year. I'm Director of Quality for AWE, the Atomic Weapons Establishment, down in Aldermaston. I live up in Glasgow, so I have a very long commute each week. I've been working in the world of quality assurance, quality and the wider assurance piece within nuclear and offshore oil and gas for most of my working life. So I'm also, for my sins, I'm a trans woman. I transitioned back in 2013 whilst working in the offshore renewables industry. Really strange experience for me, something that had been part of my life for a long time and caused me a great deal of angst, anxiety, distress and all sorts of things. But probably the best decision I ever made was transition for me. Brought me to where I am today. I spend a lot of my time not just as, quality is a strange subject. It's we're the nosiest profession on the planet because if we don't know what's going on, we can't provide assurance, advice, and other things. So I found it to be a really enlightening career path. By degree, I'm a mine engineer. So I started my life in the coal industry in the Midlands as a graduate of the National Coal Board. Unfortunately, due to the miners' strike and the demise of the UK coal industry, my job went very quickly after I graduated, unfortunately. But I moved into, at that time, into tunnelling, which is a very aligned profession. We don't really produce mine engineers in this country anymore. They're all tunnelling and civil engineering also. But that set me up with a really good background because mine engineering, you're a jack of all trades. You know something about everything. My claim to fame is I've never built anything that's lasted more than an 8-hour shift. With the ultimate temporary works engineers.
Yeah.
You keep the roof up just long enough to get the coal out.
Absolutely.
And I moved into construction and then into heavy lift. So I worked as a heavy lift manager in the crane industry for a while, and then moved into project logistics and offshore oil and gas. So I spent a lot of time out in the North Sea running a big 18,000 ton crane barge.
So very, very masculine sort of roles, I'd say.
Oh yes.
I was about to say exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was my defense mechanism.
Yeah.
Okay.
So by being busy and by doing these ultra masculine things, so I've also throughout my life had a second career in volunteering. I joined the Territorial Army in my local town. So I was still in the sixth form at the time. And I served with the TA right through that Cold War period, right to the mid-90s, when they were downsizing the TA, and I took an opportunity there to leave. Yeah. And I went into policing as a special constable.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Such a varied career. Wow.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's amazing. And
yeah,
I guess it's interesting to understand from your perspective, you know, as a trans woman, how did you make that path to transition, and how did it sit with your colleagues and your career choices, I guess?
I think for me, it's something that I'd always known there was something different. But back in the late 60s, early 70s, I really couldn't put a finger on it. I didn't know what to call it. And it wasn't until I saw a documentary on the BBC in the late 70s that about the first trans woman her journey was filmed as a part of a documentary, a lady called Julia. And I sat there watching this, glued to it, because thinking, that's me. You know, how do I now know what to call it. I now know what it is. And when I left university, I'd started with the Cold War. When they made me redundant and I had to go and find another job, I ended up down in London working in the construction sector. And I was able to go to the Charing Cross Gender Clinic. And those were the days when there was no such thing as a waiting list. And what I realized in going to speak to them, and they gave me the diagnosis of gender dysphoria, which is an understanding that you're born in the wrong body. But at that time, they made life incredibly difficult. You really had to want it. I have a very good friend who went through the system before me. She worked in the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, and like many of her female colleagues at work, she wore trousers to work. When she went to the gender clinic, if she did not turn up in a dress, hormones were withdrawn, she was put back by 6 months. They expected you to be ultra feminine, and we all know that isn't the basis of being a woman.
Hello.
That's crazy, isn't it? Because I was about to say, wow, I guess in the 70s that was really kind of cutting edge in terms of, but then to hear that as well, it was like you're being punished at the same time for whilst they're trying to support you, which is bizarre.
And for me, it said to me, I'm not strong enough to go through that. And I really didn't see how I could do that, particularly in the industries I was working in at the time. And there was no legislation protecting you. So there was no Gender Recognition Act, there was no Equality Act, and you would find the vast majority of trans women at that time would end up in as sex workers.
Yeah.
That's just the way it was seen.
Yeah.
And that's what drove me. I took on the TA in my spare time. The jobs in construction and heavy lifting and things in a day, and I just made myself busy. It blanked it out effectively, put it to the back of my mind, and I would find that when one of the consequences of that is that when a job started to not be interesting anymore, or I wasn't as busy as I should be, I would move. Because what would happen is that all of that anxiety and depression would come back.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing to keep it at bay.
Yeah.
And I went through cycles like this through most of my working life until probably it's when I moved up to Glasgow. I was working for the government for the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority in Cumbria, and part of my role, where I managed a very large change program. As part of that program, I actually engineered my job out of the organisation chart. But it was the right. It was the right thing to do at the time. So I'd already secured another role up in Glasgow with SSE, working on their major projects business. We were spending between £8 and £9 billion a year on creating assets. A fantastic opportunity. I moved up to Glasgow, got myself a flat there during the week, and then suddenly realized all my support mechanisms, my being busy on the night, volunteering stuff, model making when I wasn't doing that, doing DIY, and all of these other things weren't there. And I would come home from work because they were very strict about the 8 till 5 working regime. They really didn't want you working excessive hours and doing other things.
Yeah.
And I found sitting in the flat on my own, all I had was my television, and my mental health went downhill rapidly.
I can imagine.
And I reached out to a group in Glasgow at the time, a trans support group, and they put me in touch with the gender clinic. And I went for, I got onto their list. It was a very short waiting list up here at that time. And I was re-diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and made the decision there and then that maybe now was the time to do it.
Yeah.
And it's time to change. And it took me a couple of years to pluck up the courage to ask work. I'd never seen any, we had the right policies in place, but we didn't have any, there was no other trans people I could see. And, talking to people in Glasgow, quite a lot of the people of my age group who transitioned had lost their jobs. They one way or another, if an employer wants to make you redundant, they will.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed my work. I enjoyed my career. At the very least, I need money to pay a mortgage. So, I have to be really careful. But I plugged up the courage one day. I was sat in with HR. I was covering my boss's meetings while he was on holiday. She was covering her boss's meetings while her boss was on holiday. And I sat down and said, I need a chat with her. And the first thing she thought about was, it's about money. She said, I'm not here to negotiate pay rises. I said, no, it's nothing to do with pay rises. And I just came out with it and told her what I wanted to do. And one, it was a fantastic load off my shoulders.
Yeah.
Because I'd sat with this for a couple of years thinking, how on earth do I do it? And she just sat there gobsmacked. She said, I don't know what to say. One, thank you very much for telling me. But two, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go away and find out.
Yep.
So I actually emailed her a whole load of documents I had that I'd been given over the last couple of years, and by the gender clinic in Glasgow, but also by colleagues and friends, and things I got off the internet, all the good practice guides on people transitioning at work. So she took it away, and I didn't hear anything for a week, and I was getting a bit worried that nothing was gonna, just blurted out my sort of darkest secret and what was going to happen. And she organised a meeting with her boss who'd come back from leave, and the HR director for the wider SSE group. So I went up to the Perth office where I regularly used to travel around Scotland and Ireland with my job. And they sat me down and said, right, let's draw up the plan. How do you want this to work? When do you want this to happen? What's the risk? Have you got your own idea of the risks that may be involved with this? And how do we tell people? And so together we actually
formed a plan.
And I was told a long time ago, you can't project manage this, but we did. We put together a plan, and within a couple of months, I'd come out at work, and the rest of the world knew.
That's great. And do you feel that you were supported? I mean, did you find you experienced the inequalities now as a woman?
Throughout the process, I had a lot of support from both my line manager and from HR, and then from the directors in the business. And my first day back as Amanda, so I had about a month off. I had 2 weeks holiday, and then I had 2 weeks off to sort everything, getting my new driving license, passport, changing names on bank accounts, all of these sorts of things.
Yeah.
And first day back was I was absolutely terrified. Going into work on the train, I've been out and about as Amanda for the last 4 years. So outside of work, in fact, I did a lot of charity work. I was trustee of an LGBT charity. I ran the National Trans Police Association in Scotland. So Police Scotland had never met Martin. They'd only ever met Amanda.
Yeah.
A lot of people had never, so I've been doing all of that, but actually getting on the train to go to work was terrifying. And I got into work. Everybody was really supportive. I had no issues at all with anybody. There was some who had said, well, what do we do about toilets? You know, daft things like that. It's not a discussion I've ever had with anybody about which toilets I should use.
That's ridiculous.
But that debate has started to come back. The government and the Equalities and Human Rights Commission have started that debate again, which actually in legislation terms, anybody can use any toilet. There's no, it's only protocol that prevents us from, in theory, doing the wrong thing. But what I did find, and we chatted about this before, is that people do treat you differently. But actually, we talk about male privilege, and I don't think people can actually put a finger on exactly what male privilege is, but you can once you've transitioned.
Yeah, we've seen it from both sides, I guess.
Fascinating,
yeah. I could see it in meetings that I was treated slightly differently. On several occasions, I was said, "Can you go and get the coffees and the teas for the meeting?" And it's like, hang on, nobody asked me that before. Why?
Yeah.
And it's that sort of wow moment that says, did I actually treat other female members of my team like this? And more importantly, it's not right. We should take it in turns, and it highlights all manner of different inequalities.
Yeah.
And I found that once you get over that sort of initial shock, I would then use it to my advantage. There are things that you can use to your advantage around
Absolutely.
that. But the other one was I for the meetings, I decided that the meetings weren't structured properly. So I drew up a new terms of reference for the meetings with a rota for who would take the minutes and who would do the teas.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Absolutely. Tackle it head on.
You kind of pioneering the way by the sounds of it.
Yeah.
At that point.
And I rolled that out across all the other meetings. So every meeting I went to, if we didn't do that, I would suggest to people, maybe you need to roll this out. This is a structured way of doing it. These are the people who can take the notes. There's the guidance on taking the minutes. It made quite a change across the structure. And people, a lot of the guys would come to me and say, well, we didn't realize that we were doing anything wrong or doing anything different. And I used that whole point about, people treating me differently once I transitioned and presented differently, as to say, well, actually, you may not do it consciously, but actually you are doing it unconsciously.
And did they acknowledge that once you kind of called it out?
Quite a few did, but not all of them.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
For any of our listeners today, could you offer some tips or advice to those that are maybe in a similar situation, or women generally? How can we feel empowered in a male dominant workplace?
That's a really interesting question, because I wanted some career progression, and I really couldn't get that in the role I was in. One of the things that transition did for me was releasing inner confidence. I didn't have to worry about Amanda being in the background and being a guilty secret anymore, because it was out in the open. It's you Google me, it's all over the place, who I was before and who I am now. And so it gave me that inner confidence and strength to say, well, actually, I want my next move. I want my next level of promotion. So I moved across to Balfour Beatty, and very in the world traditional construction company, but had a really great approach to ED&I, and particularly around gender. So the construction sector is not good with gender. It's the vast majority of organizations, you'll find no more than 20% of female employees, and of those female employees, they're generally in traditional, well, I'll say traditional, you shouldn't say really traditional, but in roles like HR, administration, procurement, finance, not in technical or project management or leadership roles. I got involved with a program that they ran called Empower. And Empower was about how you give that extra level of confidence and understanding to one, hold your own, and two, to be able to take on leadership roles within the organization. And that's been a really successful program.
What a great initiative. That sounds amazing.
a lot of it was about building confidence and understanding of some of the psychology of how men work, which is interesting from my perspective, because I'm sat there thinking, did I used to do that, or do I still do it now, or do I do a hybrid? It really made me think, and I was able to give my perspective on the change for me and what that had meant. I think one of the things that I've noticed, and I've got a brand new team, well, I say brand new team, they're new to me, very large team, and what I've said to my female employees is that some of this is about your own understanding of, I would say, traditional values.
Yeah.
Because I've noticed that with some of them, they won't speak up in the meetings. And I said, your view is just as valid as anybody else's, and don't ever ask for permission to speak or permission to do something, because the guys won't do it.
No.
Just do it.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. You say that, you call it out to them, like to help kind of encourage and give them confidence. That's amazing.
And I said, within my team, I have 2 females in my lead team. I would like to even that up out of a team of 8. I've got some fantastically dedicated and very well qualified young ladies who work for me. And I said, so I've said to them, what's your next step? Where do you want to go next? And they would always hold off with, well, that opportunity is not open to me. And I could say, why? Always challenge back, because if people can't, there might be a valid reason that you don't have a particular piece of training. Well, let's see how you get that training.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's
how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's about questioning why you can't go further, why you have a different journey to the male colleagues.
Yeah, paving new paths, I guess.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's such a big impact you'll have on those young ladies' like careers, because they'll from a young age start thinking differently, like, well, if he can do that, why can't I? Whereas before, like you say, they probably held themselves back. So
I do work with some of the universities, and particularly around STEM work, which I really enjoy. And for me, it's about getting everybody else involved. I mean, I had a very interesting experience probably a couple of years after I transitioned. And you can see behind me, I make model kits. I've got thousands of them. Like most model makers, I've got more models in here than I could ever build in a lifetime, probably 3 lifetimes. But I enjoy that. I enjoy working with my hands. I enjoy crafts, but I also I still enjoy DIY and engineering, and what some people said to me were male orientated things. I said, well, 1, that's my background, that's my history. 2, that's my interest. And 3, why can't girls do it? What's to say that a girl can't be an engineer, be a pilot, be whatever she wants to be? She have the same aspiration as anybody else.
100%.
And I had people in my own community, the trans community, criticizing me because I had male orientated things in my life. And I said, I'll happily wreck my nails to get inside the engine compartment of a tank and work on its engine.
But that's crazy, because you literally can't win. You just, the sounds of it, are just being authentic and living as yourself. And like you say, even the trans your trans friends are saying, actually they're not friends if they're criticizing you, but it's kind of it's crazy that you're getting it from both sides in some ways. Yes,
and I think it's one of the things I learned very early on is that you just got to be yourself. And in this life there will be people who support you and there'll be people who don't, and that's just people and society. So I moved away from it. I used to do a lot of work with the trans community, a lot of support work, and I don't do as much now as I used to, for the simple reason that I found it you could get drawn into arguments on the most stupid of things, which actually common sense tells you, if A wants to do that, that's fine for them, but if B doesn't, then that's fine for them.
Yeah.
There's no right or wrong as long as you're not harming somebody else and you're not breaking the law. It's what's right for that individual.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The government at the moment are really discriminating against trans people.
Yes.
With regards to their aversion therapy stance. What are your thoughts on that at the moment? What message would you like to get out to people?
I would say that I don't quite understand the stance of this government. It's very, very anti-trans, and that's spread into the other groups that they run. So you'll have seen in the press that the great LGBT conference they were planning to run has now all collapsed because of this. And the Equality and Human Rights Commission head has been brought into the Women and Equalities Commission to explain her actions. So why is she raising anti-trans things and wasting time effectively when there are many other things that they should be doing?
Yeah.
For me, it's a group of people trying to reverse something that's been going really well for years.
Yeah.
We were held up as a great supporter as a country of LGBT plus rights, particularly trans, and now it's gone backwards. I think that's just a sign of the times. That's
it's odd what's going on. There's definitely something's happening.
There are a lot of these conspiracy theories, but until somebody brings up the absolute proof around it, I think it's just the way that this particular government are and their views. I mean, Liz Truss, as the sort of equalities minister, really has no time for the trans community and has used it as an excuse to drive a wedge in the LGBT community. Actually,
yeah, it's not on. Live and let live.
No,
absolutely.
No. I think once you pick on one community, they'll start and pick on another one.
So there we are. So let's just have a little chat then about ERP. So you're an ERP user. And one of the things we spoke about previously is about the importance of planning before implementation. Could you give us a bit of an overview of
Yes. Over the years, I've been involved with many IT projects. When I worked for Brambles, which was back in the 90s, because I had a home computer, it was considered I would be the IT manager as well. UHS and marine operation. I learned an awful lot about implementing systems. And IT moves so quickly, changes in development and in technology and the way that we do things changes all the time. And I've noticed that in large IT projects, particularly government, that people are not good at planning out and understanding requirements. And I'm involved with something in my own organization now, and thankfully at the early stages, it's about making sure we understand exactly what we want to do with an ERP product, why we want it, what it's going to do for us and what those benefits are, and defining all of this at the very beginning. Because I've worked on projects in a previous role when I worked for government, I was an OGC high-risk reviewer, reviewing government IT projects as an independent. And whilst I'm not an IT expert, what I would look for is how they'd managed this and how they'd managed the expectations of the organization. And one was ID cards, which was killed because they created something that no IT system in the world could actually do.
Police, yeah.
Same was the NHS National Computer System, which again across the United Kingdom was killed, but actually because Scotland had actually thought about what they wanted to do with this and been very, very good at how they were going to specify the requirements and what the end user would actually get from this. In Scotland, we have a national NHS IT system. So I can go to any hospital or medical facility in Scotland and they can access all my records. Can't do that in England.
No, it's half of it's still paper records in England.
It is, yeah.
No, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So for me, that actual planning and thought of what you want an ERP system to do is the key, and sticking to it, because the issues I've seen over the years have been where people would take a system and say, great, we want it to do that, and then somebody reads a magazine and says, oh, we can add this, these whistles and bells to it, and it can do something else. And I don't know whether you've ever programmed in BASIC.
Yes.
But so, adding subroutines because you wanted to do something, and you'd add another subroutine and another subroutine.
It just gets mental.
And eventually keel over because it was running 1,000 subroutines to achieve its end.
Yeah.
Many systems I've seen, people would do that. They would add something on and add something and add something without understanding the consequences of it, and not going back to the baseline and saying, actually, we need to change the spec. Because the spec says, if I want to do all of this, I need to add it on.
It's what success looks like at the end, and then kind of working backwards. And yeah, completely agree.
And sometimes you have to say to people, you can't have that, because adding that may look like a small thing, but actually is going to completely change the end product.
Many times our guys go into a system and they see, lots of people have been in there. There's lots of different bespoke bits of development, all sort of leading to the same endpoint. And you're then going in and having to clean all that mess up. Yes. It's rather just not have the mess to start with.
No.
That's where that continuous kind of value realization is so important. Otherwise you end up with lots of plasters all over the place.
Yeah.
Just need to amputate certain sections at that point. Start again.
So clearly defining processes before introducing things like automation.
Yeah. And I think if you can't envisage what the end looks like, then you can't develop a system.
Yeah.
It's something that I've always admired those people who put together a system from scratch, and they've come up with that vision. And I bought a number of off-the-shelf systems in the past, and someone said, how on earth did you come up with that? Because it does everything they want it to do out the box.
Yeah.
And they would say to you that it's born from experience of what other people wanted. More importantly, being able to make your product future-proofed to cater for everything that anybody's going to throw at it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing worse than you've developed something and someone comes along and says, well, I want it to do this now. Not understanding the consequences of it.
That's it. And when people transition from their jobs as well, and then people come in and go, and everyone's got different ideas of what they want. So there's it's having that succinct thing that will last beyond your role into future positions.
I think it's something that the Prince 2 methodology was brought in by government because they needed to give the IT people a structured project management approach. What's always interesting is that people think Prince 2 is project management. It is, but it's really focused around IT. Yeah. Not around general project management. And you find a lot of people trying to make it work elsewhere, and it doesn't work so well. APM and other things are probably better suited to construction, not Prince 2. But
in terms of data, I think we spoke about building a data lake.
Yes.
Tell us about that theory.
So one of the things I came across many years ago, quality is a profession that uses an awful lot of data. The first quality principle is decisions based on facts. So we use data, and particularly in the manufacturing sector, you will gather absolutely tons and tons of data telling you how your product is doing, how your production line's working, where your defects are, where your defects are likely to be, and using that data to predict as well as to actually, so rather than just having lagging indicators telling us we made 1,000 defective products last week, telling us we are likely to make defective products in this particular time frame, this area, this particular type of product. And I worked early on, particularly in construction, on how we collected data. We we produce lots and lots of records in the construction sector. And what we were doing is all paper-based. So when somebody goes and inspects something or goes and does a piece of work, they'll complete a form or complete something in paper.
Yeah.
And all that data ends up, and it can't be analysed easily. So we found a way of actually digitizing all of this. By digitizing it, we ended up with the data, and we decided that that data then needed to be available to a much wider audience. And our IT team came up with a solution of putting it into a vast data lake. They created this server which would take all of the data in. And then we looked at how do we actually usefully use that. I suppose when I got into using Power BI.
Yes.
Prior to that, we used a thing called business objects.
Yeah, so business intelligence tools, brilliant. Yeah, we work with them sort of on a daily basis.
And we found that we were getting such rich intelligence out of this, just for the small area that we applied it in, that we extended it to covering much larger areas. So my last job in construction was on HS2, and we rolled out a digitization program on everything that we were doing. So the whole railway, as such, at the end of our construction period, there would be a vast pool of data that could be interrogated. And we were using this on a day-to-day basis to predict problem issues and to guide construction methodology, because we would see a problem within it, the way we were doing something, and immediately be very quickly able to change it. Whereas previously it could have taken weeks to have actually found an issue. So we were making tunneling segments for the tunnels. Within the first 1,000, we'd found a problem.
Yeah.
If we'd continued using the paper-based records, it might not have been till halfway through production.
That's it. So BI does give you that agile sort of quick to respond result, doesn't it?
It does.
Great things. Yeah, I use them a lot in marketing, actually.
Within quality, we've launched what we call Quality 4.0, which is that digitization of quality and how we use digital tools and methodology to improve quality across any enterprise. So as chair of the CQI at the moment, it's one of the projects I've sponsored because I see the value of it and the benefits.
Yeah.
In fact, our conference in June, it's a key part of the conference is Quality 4.0, because it's the thing that everybody across quality sector is now asking for.
Yeah.
Wanting to know how we can take that next step.
Future-proof. Right. I'll let you go now, Amanda. Thank you so much.
No problem.
It's been an absolute pleasure. I think we've been educated. We have got some tips for ourselves as well from you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Really inspirational. Thank you.
Yeah.
Enjoyed chatting to you.
Yeah.
Thank
Keep
you.
on the good fight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.